So, Kelly, thank you again for being with us. And we're so excited to hear what you have to share with us about your career journey.
Amazing. Thank you. What an intro. That is such a treat. Thank you so much for that. Everyone can see my screen and hear me okay? Fabulous. So, yes, I'm so excited to be here to talk to you this evening. Uh, there's a lot of things in my introduction that I think if I rewinded to when I was at UCSB, don't really make sense or wouldn't make sense to me. Decarbonizing digital advertising, what the heck, optimizing ads with AI, very confusing. Product marketing, didn't really understand that as a discipline too much when I was an undergrad. Um, but I was really busy with other things, as you could see from this list here. So my goal for the next, I don't know, 20 minutes or so is to talk through some of my experience in my professional journey, some of the tips and tricks I've picked up along the way, and then, as mentioned, leave plenty of time for questions and to dig deeper on any of these topics that you guys would like me to. So one of the biggest benefits of being a gaucho, and I can say this, I'm a second generation. My parents met at UC Santa Barbara, and actually my husband was a gaucho as well. So we have a long legacy going here. Um, it's this ability of what you're looking at here to multitask and manage time. So I was very involved, double majored at UCSB. I like to joke and say that I was triple majoring because being chapter president of a sorority is a full-time job as well. Um, this is some of the coursework that, looking back, I think really impacted my career to date, and I didn't even know it at the time. So courses around environmental communication and intercultural communication. I do a lot of travel in my work, internet and society, media and children. I think some of these are still around if I saw them on the syllabus correctly. But you're balancing so much there, and that is such a valuable skill in the professional world. And many of you who are going to enter the professional workforce very soon, or maybe are applying to do so already, it's really tempting to just focus on these things and to make a list that's your resume of all of your accomplishments, all the things that you do. Um, but I just wanted to pause and say that rewinding back to my senior year, even with all of these things, I had no idea what I wanted to do professionally. Um, and I really didn't know where to start. So for anyone who feels like they're in that position, I strongly recommend listing out your strengths, your goals, your aspirations, things that you're thinking that you want in your career, where you want to live, and having this like internal professional journal. It's something that I've kept with me throughout my career. I refer back to it regularly, sometimes after longer periods of time than others. Um, but the left side is like who I am on my resume. The right side is who I am as a person and what I want to get out of my job. I know I didn't want to be in a research field, out in a field tracking species, but I care about the environment and I want to be on the mission to decarbonize the world, or at least to have some role in the climate crisis that's positive. I know that I'm a natural leader, organizer. I've been told that my whole life, but I also really like to kind of dive deep and get really technical on topics. Um, I don't know, just this self-reflection time, so valuable. One of the key nuggets that I'll leave you with, and we'll come back to in a minute. But all of this to say, I focused on my strengths over what was on my resume. And I found myself in an industry that I didn't even know existed, which is ad tech or advertising technology. And just zooming out on what that means, because I think advertising gets a really bad rep. You think of the time you looked up shoes and the ads chasing you around the internet, like buy these shoes, buy these shoes. And you're like, I did that last week. Or no, it's not in budget. Like I'm trying to not buy the shoes. Stop chasing me. Um, but really, like when we look at it, this little square in the corner that you're looking at, that's actually an Adobe ad. It's telling me to go do my taxes. This is just an example I pulled this week. This is what's powering the free and open internet. So the monetary exchange that's happening here, yes, advertising's gotten it wrong. It's been creepy. There's privacy issues. There's a lot to be addressed. But when you think about the amount of information and the amount of power that the internet gives us, it's a valuable piece in society. And it's something that I never thought twice about other than, oh, that's annoying. Um, so looking at that little ad in the corner behind it is this crazy industry. And this is just one example of one type of ad that could be delivered where that brand, so Adobe, is trying to get you to buy something, get you to do something, influence you in some way. And in this case, it was to buy their tax technology or something that helps me do my taxes. They targeted me correctly because I haven't yet done that for this year, but I will. But they were trying to find the most effective place for that ad to be served, to put it in front of the right person at the right time to get that conversion. And what you're looking at here is a mess of logos and all of the companies that are behind that interaction. So talk about job opportunity. There are so many companies that I didn't even know exist that play some role in that, whether it's the data, whether it's the optimization of the ad being delivered, whether it's tracking to see the attribution of if you actually followed through with the action that the brand wanted you to take. There's also this full category of agencies that develop that strategy on behalf of the brand. And early on in my career, that's really where I was focused, was account management and working with brands to spend their money effectively. And what did that look like across computers, telephone, or sorry, not telephones. That sounds very old, but your cell phones, your smartphones, connected TV devices, or things like your Rokus and your TVs, and now even digital out-of-home screens, which are those screens that are once billboards, but now digitalized. That is a massive stock exchange happening behind each and every ad that you're seeing to have a real-time creative served in front of you. So happy to go deeper on this topic. Don't want to have anyone glaze over and or get overwhelmed and want to throw up looking at this slide. So I'll talk a little bit more about my role within that industry and how I found it. So as I mentioned, account management is where I began. I started naturally picking up on ways that we could be working better, solutions that we could offer that would benefit our clients more, and really started getting more into the strategy of the sale and of working with clients. Now, if you go and Google product marketing, or if you talk to any other product marketer, you are going to get a ton of different frameworks and definitions and processes, and like literally start to end of a product. What does a product marketer do? This is too much for one human to do. It is wild. But my beautiful description that I found online that I'll speak to is this diagram here, which just goes to show that product marketing is this intersection between sales, product, and marketing, and mostly between sales and product. I feel like I sit mostly between those two teams, where I'm working with really technical folks, either data scientists, engineers, or product managers, understanding what they're building, helping them build what they're building in many cases. I mentioned I'm at an engineering offsite today, so if I look drained, it's because I've been surrounded by people who are much smarter than me all day long, and it's been amazing. But I translate. I take that information, I extract out the value of what they're building. Why is someone going to want this? Who's going to care? Maybe there's a ton of engineering effort on something, but in reality, this is a new button. And maybe there wasn't a ton of engineering, but maybe there's a ton of value that we need to go tell a client about. That's what I train the sales team up on. So I'll go create materials for them. I can provide feedback on that roadmap, get technical, but also case studies is a huge part of my work, which I feel like calls back to my comm classes so much, just how to run a proper A/B test. You would be shocked how many people don't understand the concept of a control in an experiment, or how many people want to say there's an X% increase in performance, but they're not comparing the right things to each other, or they're looking at a weird section of data or a really short time period. So that's my job, is to come in and make that really clear. I'd say benefits focused is the number one thing that I'm always sticking to. You're leading a lot of your sentences with verbs, can get into a bunch of the different product marketing details, but it's this nice balance of technical and soft skills, and getting to present to people and get in front of people on a regular basis, but also get in the weeds and feel like you're really part of that strategy development. So happy to go deeper on advertising and digital advertising, happy to go deeper on product marketing. I think in terms of my overall story and journey, my first 8 years, we'll call it, in the industry, I was really busy and I was really in the weeds, and I started learning all of the acronyms that I needed to know to survive in advertising. But I wouldn't say, again, going back to my professional journey, that I was checking all of the boxes that I wanted to. One of my degrees was environmental studies, and something that I felt very passionate about. And how the heck does advertising tie back to that? It's really hard. So I just knew I had this feeling that it was something that I did want to get back to. I wanted to tie it together. I didn't want to throw away all of my experience in this really fast-paced, really interesting industry and try to start over. So come 2020, when I think a lot of people spent a lot of time reflecting and thinking about their impact on their world, I started just writing down thoughts of how I could connect these worlds and how I could pull kind of my different lives together and do work that I was more passionate about. And I actually wrote a blog post at the time, which I don't have a blog. I never posted it. But just around this idea of like, how could we incorporate emissions into advertising? And I'm scared to go back and read that, but it's probably pretty funny and maybe close, but probably pretty far off from where I am now. Put that idea out there just on paper somewhere. Fast forward a year, I read an article. So this was already on my radar. It was already something I was thinking about, but I read an article about a company that was doing just that. They were measuring the emissions from an ad so that that data could be used for smarter decisions so that you could reduce your carbon footprint. And I think my mind exploded. I was trying to figure out how I could work with them to help them optimize my ads. And then it clicked and I was like, wait, I should work for them and with them. So I actually reached out with a cold email to the founding team. There's five members of the team at that time. I think I threw it in here because I found it and it was fun. And don't judge any of these words. It did not look like this formatting, but this is my beautiful design skills that I lack. Basically said, this is what I can do. This is my intro email, but I sent a follow-up that was, this is what I can do. This is the value that I could provide your team. Like product marketed myself in an email and just sent it. And ultimately, like this was something I was passionate about. I could come in with this skill set. Let me know when it's a fit. Also, is there someone there to pick up the phone and have a quick conversation? Because that personal connection makes all the difference. So that's how I found myself at Scope 3, which is where I've been for the last 2 years almost. And it has been a wild ride. We're 50 plus. I just, like I said, was with 15 engineers and we started with 2. So it felt really, really awesome to see the growth. It's definitely ups and downs. So by no means take this perfect little chunk of my story and think that it's been an up and to the right experience. Lots of setbacks, lots of tough days. But yeah, just wanted to highlight a second. This is kind of going into my work mode for a bit and some of the Scope 3 slides that we present to tie this back to climate and really kind of crystallize for you how climate and advertising collide. I'll pause really quick before I do this. Actually, are there any questions or anything? Everyone's still with me? There we go, good. I can only see a couple faces or just lack of no one screaming, so we're good to go. As UCSB students, I feel like this is something that you're very familiar with and very in tune with, and I hope as citizens of the world, a lot of people are in tune with this, but Paris Agreement in 2015, we collectively came together as more or less a global community and said, let's keep the global temperature change to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. We're not hitting that very, very bluntly. Last year, I just saw an article the other day, it's the warmest on record. We passed that 1.5 degrees Celsius mark, and I know 2 degrees Celsius is like the official high level. But we passed the 1.5 mark 127 days in 2023. And what this means and the opportunity this creates for anyone entering the job force today is across every industry, no matter what it is, there's roles that have a climate edge. Like there are roles where you need to know about sustainability. Like if this is my plug for a different department, sorry, comm students, that take an environmental studies class as one of your other classes, just because this will be somewhere in the company that you land, because it's going to require everyone to take action on. So again, what the heck does that look like for advertising? When you look at all of the data servers, the networks, all of the devices, all of the companies working on powering the internet, it is equal in emissions to the aviation industry. It's around 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, which sit with that for a second, because an airplane, like we're kind of familiar with going on booking a flight and seeing those emissions from the ad. And even some countries, it's mandatory that they say, do you want to offset these emissions? You don't see this jet stream coming out of your computer on a daily basis or on your phone when you're scrolling endlessly. And we don't think about the warehouses and warehouses of servers that are oftentimes like in remote deserts that require a ton of air conditioning to keep them cool and running. So tons of energy and emissions that we can't see, but they're being caused by the supply chains of our digital interactions. And what my company does is looks at that from an advertising perspective. So tons of stats that we could get into, but just one that just bugs me is 1 million metric tons every single year are emitted from ads that aren't even seen. The ones that are just not on the page that you see or don't end up loading or are out of view. There's emissions. There's a ton of waste in this industry. And it comes from a couple of different places. So the model that my team has built is looking at the scope 3 emissions, or the supply chain emissions of an ad. Scope 3 is a greenhouse gas protocol definition. Your scope 1 and your 2 are your more direct emissions as an organization. Things like the raw materials that you're using. Your scope 2 is like the electricity in the buildings that you're having your office space in. Scope 3 emissions being anything in connection to your business. So that connection word is key. For advertising, digital advertising here, that means where my little Adobe ad popped up, it's the content that's served around it that needs to be counted. So the reporter who was in Duke or at the Wake Forest game, wherever this game was held when I was jumping on this website, those travel emissions, it's the emissions from their servers and their employees as a fraction of this ad's emissions. It's the emissions from creating the ad itself. So this is a pretty low expense ad in that instance, where it's just a designer who put together some texts and pulled this together and is serving it. But if you have an expensive car ad filmed in Italy, that's a full different ballgame, where a ton of emissions are created from that. It's those things added together, and then it's also what I showed at the beginning of that complex supply chain of all of the tiny amounts of emissions from every company that touched the ad to get here. So all of their servers, all of that technology behind the scenes. Adding these things up, it allows us to make some decisions to decarbonize. So it's really technical to look at this model and to understand where all the data is coming from. We're working with hundreds of publishers to send us their data as well, and to verify them and show that they're lower emissions than another publisher. But you could see for yourself, and I'll actually happily just hop in and reshare my screen to our product itself, because why not do a live demo and see if it works? You can go to scope3.com and type in any website and see how it compares to the other websites of the world. So ESPN, not great, not horrible. but you see this breakdown. Most of their emissions are coming from their ad selections, from that supply chain that we're looking at. Their media distribution's pretty low and their creative's low as well. This is that supply chain built out, which gets real complex real quick. Like, holy smokes, why are so many companies behind every single ad call? Okay, this is a wild experience. I just can't even show how many companies are listed here. And you can look at their emissions over time. So compare that to another website. And we're looking at slightly lower emissions here. Actually, let's get an even better one. Let's get New York Times on here. Worked with them on some reduction, but boom, super low emissions. They've really optimized their supply chain, so that's lower. And most of their emissions are coming from getting their content created. So they're a news site. They're going to have a bunch of journalists. They're going to have a bunch of travel. They're going to have quality content. And there's different emissions associated with this. So I guess the point being here, same ad, same computer, there can be a different supply chain in the same way that a banana that's shipped to you from Hawaii has a different footprint than a banana shipped from Mexico or wherever we're growing bananas these days. So that was as deep as I'll go behind the scenes, but I'm happy to share more on the model and more on what emissions from advertising look like. I think just to wrap up some of these points and open it up for questions, none of this existed when I was in school, when I knew that I was studying environmental studies and communication, and I wanted to be in the professional business world. This concept didn't even exist within the industry I was in until 2 years ago. So don't feel like you need to have things all figured out at this point in your career. Definitely work on getting your foot in the door. And like I did from account management to product marketing, kind of exploring where are your strengths, who within an organization are you enjoying working with the most. I think really just giving yourself the chance to explore and be curious is a huge thing at any stage in your career. I want to constantly be curious, and that's how I end up in rooms with people where I know half of the things that they're saying. But yeah, I think this nugget that there's there's environmental jobs in every industry now is something interesting to explore if that's something that you're excited about. And yeah, I think to this day, come back to what your true goals are, not just your skills, but your desires, how you want to feel in your role. And that'll change over time. Like I use a platform called Notion for a lot of my personal notes and reflection. And it's funny to go back and see all the edits and the revision history to kind of look at the journey and see what you want to do next. So I put topics on the right. If anyone has specific questions they want to ask me, I am all yours. We didn't even scratch the surface on offsetting and carbon accounting because I thought that would just kind of get way too much on the environmental studies side, but happy to go there too. Any questions? I can't see the chat either if you're more comfortable dropping something in there.
Kelly, I don't know if you do any sort of hiring at your job or you know what the hiring looks like, but when you're in an industry that didn't, like you said, exist really 2 years ago, what are you looking for when it's probably pretty rare that there will be people that have experience doing exactly what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I'd say so. We're smaller startup. That being said, our hiring is definitely ramping. For this size of company, it's a go-getter and someone who's leaned in. Like, I think what got me this role was my proactivity in reaching out and just raising my hand and saying, this is what I can do for you. I'd say there's a ton of opportunity right now to go into any of these agency or ad tech partner companies or even the publishers and the brands that we work with. And like across that kind of first slide that I showed, across that spectrum, there's a bunch of different types of entry-level positions. And yeah, reaching out, being proactive, following up. I was just having a conversation the other day with someone about what can make you stand out, and being human and having a genuine connection and conversation. I think it's really stressful. And I sense a lot, especially from recent grads or undergrads that I've talked to, that there's a lot of pressure and they're very stressed and they feel like they need to enter an interview knowing everything about the company. And I just want to kind of alleviate that stress a little by saying, like, product market yourself. You don't have to know everything about their strategy. They don't even know everything about their strategy. They're still figuring it out. Take questions and turn them into what value you can provide the organization more than anything. So if you are really interested in this field, I would definitely take a conversation with you and talk about some of the different open roles. I think it wouldn't be unheard of for us to hire a newer hire, but I can also point you in the direction of a lot of companies that are thinking in a similar way to ours, that are more structured.
Is there anything you would suggest that students do while they're still at UCSB to kind of keep active in the space or be best positioned when they are graduating?
I mean, I think any student that's on this call tonight is already doing step one of that, like leaning in, taking the opportunity to talk to the alumni that you know. Networking is always such a tough word for me because I feel like I have to go and impress people, or like I'm walking around with my resume, but just being curious and asking questions. And yeah, really, it's refreshing to talk to someone who is enthusiastic and energetic and wants to enter the workforce and wants to know what you do. Like, this brings me just as much joy to come do this type of thing and to meet students and talk through things. And it gives me ideas for how I could be doing my job differently. Don't think that you're just taking by connecting with someone, and don't think that you have to be all polished. Like, be authentic, be curious, and follow what you're passionate about, because that'll come out quickly if you're not doing something that you care about. I just packed like 10 different topics into one answer, so I hope that's helpful.
No, I think that's great.
Cool.
Do you have any, I guess, tips or tricks or what you do when networking with people in terms of like follow-up or things you try to implement?
Always follow up. And even if there's rejection, I think that's a little more uncomfortable, but that's less networking and more applying to roles. I think asking what you can do to improve shows people that you're interested. From a networking perspective, I'm constantly programmed, and wow, now I'm realizing how deep this is in me, to think of what value I could be providing to them if they're looking for feedback on an upcoming project, or if they want me to look over something and give them my gut reaction. Like, it's nice to have feedback and input. And that sticks with people too. Like, you meet a bunch of people, especially if you're at a networking event specifically, but bringing something to them makes you memorable. And that doesn't have to be expertise. It can be just honest feedback and enthusiasm.
I also have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Angie. I'm also a comm and environmental studies major, actually. So this
we
is
got one.
beyond perfect. And I've been trying to figure out how I might pull together my two areas of interest for my career. And when you described what you wanted to do as a career, you kind of put into words what I've been trying to put into words for a long time when people ask me what I want to
Yeah.
do. So I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about how you figured out where you wanted to go with your two majors and what field was right for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's definitely connect on LinkedIn because that's exciting. And I want to see wherever you end up going. Um, but I think also rewinding and kind of looking at my journey, my first step was very much to one side. I was a student of media and advertising for quite some time, and I really worked hard to understand and get in the details and grow in that side of my brain. So getting it perfect, I think it's more common now to have an overlapping job between those two majors. I think when I was looking, it was pretty rare to have like the business world and the environmental world collide as it is right now. I think, yeah, knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect, knowing that you can go be an expert in one field and bring in the other side, whichever direction you go when you're being pulled is huge. Tons of different industries now, though, when it comes to carbon removal projects or like brands. Every single brand has a sustainability or environmental studies department now that you could go work at. Like there's a lot more options. So I think keep an open mind with that skill set and with what you're looking for, and let's connect.
Thank you. And I
Yeah.
have a follow-up question, actually.
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of different companies, like you said, have sustainability sectors, I guess.
Mhm.
But I've always been kind of skeptical of them. I initially thought that, you had to work for a nonprofit to actually make a difference, but now I know that there are a lot of jobs out there where you actually can make a decent environmental impact, even within like corporations.
Yeah.
So how did you know that you had found a job where you felt like you were actually making a difference and not just a cog in the wheel, sort of?
Yeah, doing it for real and actually seeing the numbers that are taken in at Mauna Loa slow down. uh, there's a lot of BS, pardon my language, in the green world, a lot of greenwashing, we call it. There's a full communication challenge that we can get into here of how bad the climate crisis communication was and how global warming and the doom and gloom communication really threw people off. So yeah, I'll say there is that that level of non-authenticity. I don't know. We can have a conversation about that, but I think within organizations, it's really kind of up to you and the role that you create as well. How to sniff that out. Do they have a sustainability plan as an organization? Are they reporting their corporate emissions? So there's actually legislation coming to California where as early as 2026, you have to start reporting your scope 1 and your scope 2 emissions if you're a large company, and 2027, what year are we in? 2027, I believe it is when scope 3 emissions will be required as well. So people are going to have to start doing it for real one way or another, which is great news. Ask them for their sustainability plans. Look on their websites, see if they've reported their corporate emissions. See if they just have this as an initiative, like we often see with like diversity and inclusion initiatives, where they've stood up a group within their organization, or is this they have leaders who have a table on their executive team that are focused on sustainability. Ultimately, my goal and how I know I'm doing it for real is because we're tying it to money and we're showing the financial benefit of if you buy green, lower emissions media, you're also saving money because you're cutting waste. So there's that angle as well. Yeah, not an easy question. Hopefully those are some things that you can start applying.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
I really liked what you said about talking about kind of translating super technical information and making that digestible. I've always felt like that was something that I would be suited for, and I'm looking forward to taking data science communication next quarter. I was just
Yeah.
wondering, what advice would you give for kind of seeking out roles in that and presenting yourself? Because just with a communication degree, I want to be able to kind of show that I'm interested in handling these more technical concepts. And it feels like a lot of companies would be looking for someone with kind of a degree with an engineering background. And I was just wondering what kind of roles should a communication person seek out, like yourself, who is kind of drawn to these more technical aspects?
Yeah. My last role, I was the only product marketer. It was very skewed product marketing, where I was the only product marketer when I started, and it was all data scientists, engineers, and product managers. And they had nothing. All they had was product specs that the product team had written. So I got like that firsthand experience of getting very technical about a very technical topic and educating people on machine learning models. I don't think that they're looking for an engineer for that role, first off, or for a product person. There's definitely technical writers out there that are specialized, and a lot of companies contract them in often, even though it's much easier to have them in-house. Like, I know our company's strategy will be to have that in-house. Practice, write a sample, see a feature that's released, or follow some companies with release notes that inspire you. Like Figma is a company that does a really good job. I think Notion does a great job. See the style and kind of develop that. So if you see a feature for a company you want to go work for, say, hey, this is how I write the technical specs on this. And that space expands into so much, but one big area is education. So if you can write the technical documentation, the next level is, can you train the trainers to go educate and inspire other people about that product as well? So like Figma's done an awesome job of kind of creating this ambassador network and fostering that. So as a comm major, maybe that's an advantage that you would have that a more technical writer wouldn't have, is that you can engage a community and you can kind of make it more than just the tech specs and the documentation being translated.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ellie, it looks like
Leslie, you're so sweet. I'm trying to read the comment. Is that what you were doing right there? Yeah.
It looks like there is a question in the chat. That says, I have one question related to topic 3. Given the many AI tools are now handling various marketing tasks, such as creative content creation, copywriting, and SEO, which specific areas within marketing do you recommend students or recent graduates to prioritize for skill development and career preparation?
I love this question. I was just talking about this question. We were talking about case studies, and one of the engineers suggested we use AI. And I was like, are you trying to get me out of a job here, or what are you doing? I am a huge advocate, especially the closer I've worked to AI, that humans are and will forever be needed, especially when it comes to the communication. There's so much jargon, so many acronyms, so many case studies that would be so generic and so flat. And every single thing that we'd spit out would say, this publisher reduced their emissions by X%. There would be no flavor, marketing moment. How are we going to launch this? What's it going to look like? How are we going to excite people? Like, it's almost like if we automate so much of that, which don't get me wrong, there's absolutely tasks that we can automate. And I think getting the structure of that and exporting a case study from a platform, just going with this example, is something that AI could help with. But really breathing life into it is the communicator's job, and really making it resonate with someone and bringing that right case study in front of the right person and saying, look, you could be doing this, or hey, you could have a first to market opportunity to do this better than this. I think I just want to revisit, make sure I'm addressing all parts of this question because it was so well written. What skills specifically to develop? Creative thinking. That is where AI can spit out ideas, and it can give you copy, and it can automate a lot of your tasks and your admin, which is awesome. But again, how does that actually connect with another human being? Because in most scenarios, it's a human being that's making the decision about where the money is spent or which products are used. So I don't see that being replaced by AI anytime soon.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Hi, I'm a 2023 graduate, so fairly new, but I was a comm major and I saw this email in my UCSB email and I was like, I need to be here. And I didn't want to co-opt any of the current students asking questions, but I actually just started a job in ad tech in product marketing. So I'm at like an SSP, but so a lot of the stuff you were saying about, supply path optimization and stuff like that is something very current and real to me. So I thought it was very interesting to see someone, in this path, like further along the line. I actually just started getting involved in my company's like sustainability initiative, and we work with companies like Ad Net Zero, 51 to Carbon Zero. And so hearing about this is super interesting and super like relevant to my day to day. And a question I have as a recent grad is, what would you do, or what advice would you give to someone in their first job? Because, when I was in everyone else's shoes a year ago, I was like so focused on getting a job. And what are some best practices? And I think this is still relevant to students right now to think about the future, because it's something I wish I would have thought about. But what are some things that you would have done or you did that you really thought were helpful in your first job?
Yeah, and we might throw it back to you on how you landed product marketing and how you like directly went into that, because I think that's awesome. First job, I am a real believer in hard work, and that doesn't mean burning yourself out or not having work-life balance, but it means really engaging and leaning in and asking a ton of questions. And like learning and teaching is a value that there's been at every single company that I've worked at. Like a lot of companies say it, a lot of companies live it, but I think as individuals live it, it's a better organization, which is carve out time immediately. Like at some point soon, if you're improving in your career and if you're growing, your calendar gets jammed and you spend so much of your time getting the next thing done and reacting to emails and putting out fires and supporting your other employees. And it's just fire hose of things. Hold time for learning in things that directly impact your organization, things that maybe it's an area that you want to grow into, but you're just curious about it. Like that is valuable for a company if the employees are growing professionally and personally. So just make that a practice in your everyday life. Make sure you're reading something that interests you. And I felt like I had to read all the advertising trade news, like from all the 30 different sources right at the beginning. And it's overwhelming, but say every day I'm going to read one article, or every week I'm going to spend 1 hour taking an online course, something along those lines. Start that practice now, and then take advantage of the fact that you're new and explore other departments. Ask questions. I remember I had a connection in my first role out of college that she was like in a very technical, very insane role and is now doing like political marketing. She's this brilliant woman, but she and I got on this topic once, and it led to her leading a session on 401ks and just like teaching myself and my other coworker all about the value of a 401k. And I look back and I'm like, that was so valuable that she had me start a 401k when I was 21. So yeah, it doesn't have to be like just about what's on your workload. It could be something that you're curious about that'll benefit you down the road. How did you find product marketing? How'd you know that's what you wanted to do?
So during college, I interned at Zoom, so like, the tech company, and I just applied to a marketing internship because I was like, oh, I'm creative, like maybe this is what I want to do. And they put me in product marketing for their developer platform, and I was like, I don't even know what those words mean.
Nice.
And exactly what you said, I love the bridge between, technical product engineering and like commercial sales, like actually getting that out there and being the bridge and translating and interpreting. And that was probably the main thing that drew me in. And the Venn diagram that you shared, where you get to interface with so many different teams and like kind of be at the center of all that, I also really like, because I'm curious and I like learning things and I like building connections with, people and like ideas, if that makes sense. So and then I knew that was something I wanted to do in the future. And so when I was applying for jobs, when I graduated, the economy wasn't in best shape, but I was lucky enough to find a job in something that was interesting to me. And I didn't know anything about ad tech going into it. I was just like, I've done product marketing before, hire me. And I've learned so much. So it's very cool to hear from you as someone who's been in the industry a while.
Awesome. Message me as well, and I'll get you the other slides that we have on Scope 3. We work with Ad Net Zero. It's a like industry body that's also focused on the same initiative as their name suggests. Great questions. Thank you.